Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, good evening, even. This is episode 5 of Malt Travail. If you remember from last week, those who listened last week, we're kind of in the middle of our pilgrimage from the past. So last week we had a good chat about going west from York and Manchester delights of Keighley and Skipton. And this week we said we'd concentrate on the other side of the Great County. We're going to look at the East Riding and Hull. And that then will leave us next week to pick up the Transpennine Real Ale Trail, which apparently I've been reading today that was it was the Oz Clarke and the other bloke who, remember they did that program. They claimed that they made it famous first, but that was something like 2009. And as you mentioned last week, we were back in the 86s, and we've been I've been up in my loft this week digging at all the old books. So I found my 86 Good Beer Guide, which is quite interesting. And this evening, Nicholas is coming live from the cellar bar. So
I thought I'd have a quick sneak out to my local. No, I'm only joking. It's been a bit warm up here in North Yorkshire this week, so I thought I'd venture down into the cellar. The temperature's dropped again now, so keeping myself warm with some nice Yorkshire beer again.
Are you going to give us a little pan round, Nicholas, so we can see the cellar bar in its all?
Not at the moment. No, I've got about 3 extension leads plugged in at the moment to rigged up to me iPad. So I don't want everything to start collapsing. Maybe next week.
We'll send one of those Google cameras down so get a 3D image there. And Bruce, are you back with us again this week? How are you feeling this week?
I'm fine. I can't have Vimto sadly only that. Still can't face the beer, but I'm sure it'll come back. I had a sausage for the first time this week, so that was good.
Oh, well, that's progress. That's progress then. So we are recording this on Thursday, the 18th of February. So it still feels, I know it's been quite light. It was light tonight till 6 o'clock, which is always a good sign, but still not much sign of pubs opening anytime soon. We are all still awaiting the grand announcement on Monday when we're going to get an idea. Some of the papers have been talking about Easter, but I don't know really. It's a bit better. We'll have to wait and see really.
Nearer May, I think.
Normality, aren't they?
Yeah. So we'll just do the normal kind of quick roundups. We're perhaps trying to spend a bit less time on this. So I've just going back through. I've just been writing up last week's notes, and we spent nearly 3/4 last week just doing the first few bits. So we might do a bit quicker these. What we have done is I've written up the pubs that we talked about last week. And put them together on a little sheet. So we'll find a way of either through Twitter or on the Facebook page of making that available. Or again, if people would like to message us directly, if you DM us either via Facebook or the Twitter feed, I'm more than happy to, or YouTube, I'm more than happy to send those on. We're just going to find a ways of getting that out, just finding our feet as we go through this. So as I mentioned, this evening, we're going to focus on our Past Pilgrims Part 2, which is looking at the East Riding of Yorkshire. And then I said we've got our final bit there. Then we need to do a bit of thinking, guys, about where we're going to go after that, really. We mentioned we might break next week and do, again, a 2-parter and perhaps talk about Leeds the week after. We've mentioned 1 or 2 other places that we could talk about. So we perhaps need to get our thinking caps on this week and come up with another little series of episodes after that as well.
Canterbury, Tyne and Weir, haven't we, really?
Yeah.
We did that one, Bruce. South Shields, Tyne and Weir.
Yeah. So that's the point of today, and I just thought we'd kick off by obviously one of the highlights of going to Hull is you see lots of white telephone boxes, which again I think if you haven't, certainly people who haven't been to Hull, it was a little bit of a shock. And apparently, again, this all goes back to 1903, I think, when the General Post Office started to develop the telephone network, but it was up to individual cities and towns to decide what they want to do. And Hull, apparently a few places did. Hull said, no, we want to do it our own way. So they set up the Hull Telephone Company. They, whatever reason, went for white telephone boxes. You'll also notice that there's no crest, there's no royal crest on telephone boxes. There's another long story there we might get to when we get to the Civil War and one of the pubs in Hull. KCOM are the company that now run Hull Telephone, and they still do have those white telephone boxes. So they're getting a little bit rarer now, aren't they? They've got a new version, haven't they? It's a bit more kind of 21st century. I guess they're worth quite a lot of money if you can find one and you can put one in your garden or whatever.
About £4,000 refurbished. If you want a red telephone box nowadays, a proper cast one.
Okay. And people
And,
who are always quite, if you
that's-
speak to people at Hull, they're always quite outraged about the price of K-Com's internet, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's quite a contentious point, isn't it? I think it's the most expensive broadband in the country, I believe.
And I don't know, is it still a closed cities? I mean, I presume you should be able to. Can you get other providers as well, or?
Well, it's kind of weird. They have all the infrastructure, don't they? So it's all reflecting the prices. It's as I understand it.
So your line
People-
rental
how
has to go
people
through
will always
K-Com.
crunch about the
Yeah.
broadband.
Right, so
Rather
okay.
archaic, really.
If you want to be a bit geeky, they've still got their own train system as well, haven't they, Bruce?
Have they?
Well, isn't the Kingston
Train.
Rail? Is
Well,
it
Hull
still
Trains is now, isn't it?
Hull
But-
Trains privately owned still?
which is why it hasn't really been running, hasn't it? Because they very early had to pull most of their services because obviously there was no football, and I guess they don't get any subsidy from national government. So I know I've heard a few things. I follow a couple of the Hull MPs, and there's been a bit of a shout about it really, because they tend to go more south, don't they, the river and kind of out towards Pontefract and Doncaster. When I look,
The trains just go to London. They just stop at Selby, Brough, and I think it's Grantham or Retford, isn't it? Then they go down. So I'm part of first group now, though, isn't it? But like I say, we had the semi-Grand Central up here. There were these third-party operators, aren't they? And they get no subsidy, so they just pulled out straight away. But the trains are deserted. I come through York Station every night, my bike on the way home from work. I saw a Zoomer train tonight, and I saw about 2 people on it. It's just absolutely
quiet. But I was a bit half term, I guess, a bit more as well. So just quickly, we'll just do our bloopers from last week. For some reason, again, I didn't drink that much last week, but I kept referring to a cider that was, I kept saying Aspinalls, and Aspinalls is a very posh handbag company in London. I know a few zoos, don't they, Aspinalls, and not Aspalls, which again, it was the one I should have said. Although again, I was a bit of a shock. I remember halfway through last week when we found out that actually Aspalls is now brewed by Molson Coors, and it's not some little Suffolk farm as they claim. I also
Molson Coors or Heineken?
No, it was Molson Coors.
Molson Coors.
And I also made a complete boo of trying to pronounce that US state, Ohio. See, I can't look at do it now. Ohio. And
Ohio.
Hawaii or something, which is very bad, which is where Brewdog have their American brewery. And then we got, just listening back, we got a bit confused, really. There are, just double check this week, there are 3 brewers in Tadcaster, as we kind of suggested. And I think, Bruce, you got this about right, that what was the big John Smith's brewery, the one that you see from the A64 with the big tall chimney. You'll recognize it on the beer mats and on all John Smith's marketing. That's now the Heineken UK brewery, and they still do brew John Smith's. And then Nick mentioned the Tower Brewery, that was taken over by Bass. And then that again is where Coors are now based, brewing all those Yorkshire beers. Like Kronenberg 1664, what was the other one? And Amstel, those famous Yorkshire beers, all brewed in Tadcaster. And then obviously we talked about Sam Smith's, and obviously they're in the same place as they were.
And most contentiously, of course, Newcastle Brown Ales brewed at Tadcaster as well.
That's right, yeah. We might get onto that when we do the Newcastle thing. I've been looking into a little bit about that on my beer course. And just one thing that, again, I'd learned actually, I was just doing just writing up the notes for the beer list for this pub list for this week, and I came across it's really good actually. It's Visit Bradford. I've worked together with Timothy Taylor's and with the local Camera branches, and there's quite a nice Keighley and Worth Valley ale trail. I've put the link into that. It's quite a nice document. It's about 12, 13 pages long, and it goes a bit of background, talks about the transport networks. And then goes through quite a few of the towns you mentioned last week. We can see their little summary of the pubs and also mentioned the breweries. So it was mentioned that their Keighley page, I don't know whether these are ranked in particular order, but again, the ball makers and cricketers, or the cricks, I understand it now it's referred to, we got those as our top 2 as well.
Looks like alphabetical to me.
Possibly. Although we've got Burlington after cricketers, Nick. So
yeah.
Right.
The cricketers apparently is no longer with Timothy Taylor's, and I've just written that up now. And another independent chain have taken it on, and they feature mainly Ossett and Old Spot Brewery, which is one that I don't think I've come across recently. Which
Rather bizarre, we noticed that the Burlington Arms sell Timothy Taylor's beer, but via electric pumps.
Yeah,
Which it seems like sacrilege, doesn't it? I've never had a pint of electric Timothy Taylor's, have you?
I probably have, because if you think about a lot of the working men's clubs, they all added those electric half-pint dispensers, didn't they? And it was, with an oversized glass. So you got that big head on the top.
In clubs are. I've seen Sam Smith's, but yeah, those bizarre half-pint vase glasses were probably in the clubs, weren't they? Yeah.
And then the other thing on the other side there, just again, they list the breweries. And I don't know how up to date this is, but again, you know, there's at least 5 breweries now working out of Keighley or the surrounding area. Oxenhope obviously is on that Haworth Worth Valley Railway, so it's the last stop. In fact, we probably haven't been because Haworth's the one before. So that might be again that Bridge House, and there's a couple. I think some of the couple of pubs in Haworth now are promoting their beers. Goose Eye, obviously, I think we've definitely drank Goose Eye. Nailers is one that I hadn't come across before.
Yeah,
that I want to dig out. And similarly, Old Bear is another one that again I hadn't come across before. And obviously, we mentioned Tim Taylor's several times. I think, as you said there, Nick, that Madonna famously became a fan of Landlord. But again, I've seen Landlord cropping up quite a lot this week in some of the beer podcasts about. You know, it has got such a global recognition, really. So, and you do wonder last week how the effect of the pandemic and beer sales, how something that's going to affect something like Taylor's. But I guess they've got deep pockets, as we say in Yorkshire. So, beery highlights for this week. Again, just for me, mentioned last week, I bought my wife a lovely bottle of Mason's raspberry gin. And in return, I got a very nice mini keg of Titanic Anytime IPA. And again, I mentioned that Nick saw me at Christmas. These are these new mini kegs which Titanic are using, which is quite interesting. They have a CO2 little canister at the top there. So when you first get them, you kind of release this CO2. And that does mean that it's quite a carbonated beer. And I've just about got to the bottom of it after 5 or 6 days. And it's still as lively as it was the day where, you know, in the past they go a bit flat, those, don't they? So interesting.
How many pints?
Well, it's 5, what are they?
5 litre.
5 litres. So what's that? About 8 pints.
Just short of 10 pints.
10 pints, yeah.
I think a pint is 483 millilitres.
Yeah.
What's the lifespan of the keg?
Well, they reckon the 3 weeks, but it will last 3 weeks in my house. So, but no, I wonder whether this keg, technology, whether again that's going to be one of the positives of coming out of this. I just noticed on my Facebook line, I'm being bombarded with UFlow keg sales and what's the other one? Direct, what's it called? The one that Honest Brew, Perfect Draft. Pinter, that's on all my internet feed. I get Pinter, which that's one where you brew your own beer. You brew 10 pints every 3 weeks. So interesting how that goes. I got a great book I've managed to find a copy of Michael Jackson's Great Britain to Belgium. When I first started looking for these, they're 220 quid on Amazon, which I thought I ain't gonna spend that much. I find it for 9 quid somewhere. I think I've got a 3rd edition, which will be okay. And again, I've been reading a few things this week about Belgium, and I do think, chaps, that needs to be our next away kind of abroad trip. I do think it's been a while
from all.
Yeah, it's been a while since I went to Belgium. I still
on the ferry.
I think the train's a better option, Nick, personally. Although I reckon the flights are quite cheap as well. And you get to most places from Brussels Airport pretty quickly.
Plus the train from Hull the ferry from Hull to Zeebrugge finished in December, Nick. No longer
completely.
Yeah.
All right.
Got a little extension for it only service for the remainder of the pandemic, but no more passenger service, sadly.
But what is that? Is that just because of COVID, or is that?
No, that's the economic decision, apparently.
All right.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see though with the Brexit now and the backing up in the ports of Dover and stuff. They reckon they were going to start using some of the smaller ports just to take the pressure off.
You would hope so, wouldn't you? I mean, we stayed in Ostend on holiday about 4 years ago, and just the range of beers available in restaurant and bars is breathtaking. It's like going into a beer library, like a bottle. The pubs are like bottle shops. Next to our hotel, there was a very small, sort of working man's bar. Hundreds and hundreds of bottles of beer. And you could go in the day before, and they'd cook a Cabernet Flammard with about 24 hours notice for you. And you got to choose any 4 bottles of beer. So there's a meal for 4 with any 4 bottles of beer you chose within reason. It worked out about €10 ahead, I think 12 euros ahead. Insane. They just served it in a crusade dish full of beer. I mean, imagine being able to do that here. It'd be fantastic, wouldn't it?
So let me guess, Bruce. You ordered kids a main adult meal as well and got their 4 bottles of beer each.
No, sadly the beer had to go in the Cabernet Flammard.
And then but they're well set up, aren't they? I mean, most of the bars have quite extensive menus, don't they? Beer menus. and normally
Yeah.
in English and in whatever it's Flemish or French. So, and then the last one there is obviously Camera's 50th anniversary. I think currently that book's £22 on pre-order. I haven't gone.
That's the special edition with the gold leaf edges. I'm wondering whether to go for one of those myself. It should be 25. To Camera members, it's 22, and then there's the normal paperback one, which I think is about 15 quid. But that's the one that you're showing there. If anybody's on the YouTube, that's the special edition one. But I think it's only available to Camera members.
Yeah.
It
might be worth, certainly something for the future, isn't it? Like you say,
it is. It's
limited edition.
Yeah.
So that's maybe something to consider. And then I came across this as well, which again to me is another sign. I think Sam's maybe coming in 21st century, that they're currently doing obviously pub in a box, another one of the kind of pandemic benefits of brewery.
It's been available for years, Michael.
Has it? All right.
Yeah,
I thought it catch
some of the
on,
pubs
right.
do. Some of the pubs do sell it. The Trafalgar Bay, they've been selling it for donkey's years. The few choice to go down there, but it's quite been available in the few gift shops as well. Not kicking about. I've seen it in the shop in Whitby.
I thought $11.95 was great until I looked at the postage. It was $8.50, which is quite a lot, isn't it? But then, so I guess if you can go into one of those, I presume some of the pubs are open for off sales. So whether you could pop in and get one. And again, I thought it was interesting their choice of beer. Again, was quite interesting. The organic lager is really nice. Pale, and then we mentioned, I think it was the other one we mentioned, but the organic chocolate stout again. I know it gets a good write-up, doesn't it? And the pub featured, I've written this down somewhere. The pub on there is the Greyhound, which is a little village in Saxon just outside Tadcaster.
That is an absolutely fantastic pub. Both it's one of the winter and summer, but again, best on a dark night when you go in there. It's got roaring fires, little tiny rooms, has it, Nick? Stone walls.
Yeah, they don't let children in. They'll do it, the Bruce.
No, they don't, unfortunately, last time we were there. But obviously, it's no bad thing. But it's a fantastic, on a dark winter's night, you would not want to be anywhere else. It's really high up as well between Taddy and Towton. So it really catches.
But again, you'd have to probably be able to get to drive there, wouldn't you? Because you might get a buzz in the day, but I think night.
There's no bus to Saxton there. Yeah, so sadly, if you want to go there, you do need a driver. I'll get to Paddy.
They've only had a road there for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting, that one there as well.
Can I, before you move on, can I promote a pub in a box?
Yeah.
Right, okay, so Great Newsome, I'm actually drinking one of their beers tonight. I would say Great Newsome are in my top 3 at the moment in terms of beer on the bar and also bottle beers. So they're actually doing a pub in a box. They're offering 10 bottles of 500 milliliter beers, mixture of bottles, a pint glass, a bag of nuts, some Yorkshire crisps, some beer mats, and they also supply you with a QR code, which means you can download a pub quiz, and that's priced at $25.50.
Very good, that, isn't
bad,
it?
Yeah.
Well, if Sam Smith's giving you 3 bottles and a glass for $11.95, these guys are giving you 10 bottles and a glass and a few nibbles for twice the price. Once again, though, the only thing is postage $8.50.
Yeah.
But I suppose once again, compared to Sam's, you'll be getting a parcel that's twice the weight of it. Well, 3 times the weight of a Sam's parcel for $8.50. Yeah. So I think I'm going to treat myself this weekend.
What size bottles are they? Are they 440s? What are they?
500 milliliters.
5.5s, right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you purely look at that, I mean, if they'd been open and I was allowed to travel, I would have gone and picked one up from the brewery because of that. You're looking at less than £2 a pint, really. £2 a bottle. But as I say, anybody, Great Newsome beers. The one I'm on tonight is pricky back option, which is the Yorkshire word for
quite nice, that one, isn't it? Yeah.
A hedgehog. I like their Select Dust. They do the Frodingham's best. They're actually based upon the Wolds. In fact, I've got 2 Wolds beers tonight. I've got World Top, World Gold. They were probably the first well-known brewery up on the Wolds over in David Hockney country. But as I say, Great Newsome have been on the go a fair while now. Once again, farming family diversified, use all their own barley and stuff like that. But they've got a core range of beers and they don't tend to mess about. They don't think they have to produce a different flavour style of beer every week, which I think leads to consistency. So whenever I've walked in a pub anywhere, seen their beer on, it's always been a consistent, decent pint. And I'd much rather have that than lots of different flavours to choose from.
And then have I read that the World Cup have also moved into whiskey now as well? That they are.
Yes,
They can call it whiskey now. They
Yeah.
moved into that 4 years ago, but obviously you can't call a whiskey until it's been laid down for 3 years.
Yeah.
So that is their partner company is a Filey Bay whiskey company. So you'll start to see that in the shops. Quite expensive. I think it's between 40 and 50 quid for a bottle.
Yeah.
But I understand it's very, very nice. So it was they were selling it as Yorkshire Spirit up until last year, I think it was.
Yeah.
And obviously whiskey is clear when you first get it, like Pachin. It's the actual aging in the barrel that gives it its colour and its other flavours. So as I say, it's Filey Bay Whiskey Company.
So Nick's
successful again, really is.
Yeah,
well, got a good beer.
Nick's chosen some good beers then, that linking very much to our East Riding view. I unfortunately are drinking Californian IPA from Sierra Nevada, just because it's what I got in the garage. But I have got a Timothy Taylor's Landlord lined up to finish off the day. Thank you to my friend Simon Scott, who's listening to this, hopefully, who passed that on to me over the weekend. We met up one of our distanced meets. So quick beer news again, probably just want to just zip through this a little bit, really. Just the Sibber story there. Sibber again is the Independent Society of Brewers, which is more of a trade thing. Just really the theme we've talked about the last few weeks. Their report this week was talking about particularly impact on craft and cask brewers. The headline: 200 million fewer pints of craft beer brewed in 2020. And just echoes what we talked about last week, really, that it's those independent brewers seen a 34% drop in their profit and in their money and in their turnover. And we've talked about with the impact that's going to have. And then it goes on and talks about, obviously, the ones that could switch to mini keg and bottles and cans have done okay. But obviously, as we said last week, a lot of them are so much geared up towards cask and keg production. It's hard out working on there. Another story this week about billionaire, whatever they are, equity groups. This time it was the Sandy Lane Group, which apparently is Bruce, some very well-known racehorse trainers.
JP McManus is an absolute gentleman, but of course in the past he's owned Manchester United, hasn't he? He had shares in Manchester United with that big fallout with Alex Ferguson, I believe, didn't he? And his own nursing homes. Yeah, they're all quite well-known chaps, these, but he's pretty sure.
And then the owner of Spurs as well, and they've put put together a bid of to buy out or to take a big share in Mitchell & Butlers, which we've been talking about again. And we've mentioned we quite like Mitchell & Butlers, quite a good chains, or the chains they have. It's amazing, actually. In fact, let me move this on for those that are watching on YouTube. It's amazing how many brands that Mitchell & Butlers now kind of look after. So Sizzling Pubs, Vintage Inns, Harvester, Ember Inns, Toby Carvery, Castle Inns, Nicholson's, we've talked about quite a lot, O'Neill's, Alex, All Bar One, Miller Carter, Browns, Innkeeper's Lodge, Oak Tree, Orchard Pubs, Premium Country Pubs, Stonehouse Pigs and Carvery. So it's quite a hell of a, it's a great portfolio, isn't it?
I'd only recommend a couple of those for real ale, though, really. I would say sort of Vintage Inn, tend to have the real ale in. Sizzlers, I think sometimes the regional beers in. A lot of the others, it's just mega brew stuff.
We have two Sizzlers next door, down the road. In fact, my two closest pub is Sizzlers, and I mean, one has 4 hand pulls on. They always have draft bass on. I presume again, it's then probably I don't know. It's Enterprise. I don't know what beer link they've got. Like you say, Vintage Inns are quite good. They usually have a good range of beers, don't they? And we said Nicholson's always have a good range.
And they give 10% discount on your camera card. Not that a lot of the staff know that. In fact, I actually got in contact with head office and said, look, can you tell me where the button is on your till? So the next time I go in and offer me camera card and the staff behind your bar look at me gone out, I can tell them exactly where they can find the discount on the till, which, once again, Vintage Inn's not cheap anymore for a pint in there. You're paying up to at least 4 quid for a pint of real ale. So to get 10% off brings it back down to sort of 360, which I'm more used to paying, really.
So they put a £350 million equity fund together, which is giving them 55% share of the company. As you mentioned there is 1,600 venues in the UK and over 40,000 employees. So possibly good news for some of those guys, because again, I guess it puts the company in quite a good footing, doesn't it, going forward, really?
Can I just put
£250 million to ride out the pandemic? That's quite sobering, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I just put
that size has no funds? It's it kind of puts into context for little businesses. God, big decision coming with the budget and next week, isn't there? Really, in terms of timing and cash and grants, is there?
Go on, Nick.
Can I just go back to corrections? You did your corrections. I had a little correction from last week when I said that the King's Head in Masson was a Mitchells and Butler pub. It's not. It's a Spirit Pub Co. That is a subsidiary of Green King.
Yes, right. I've written that in the update today.
Those in the know that Green King is now owned by Hong Kong financiers. Their headquarters is in Hong Kong. It's actually owned by, let me see, I had written it down. Chung Kong Holdings now own Green King. And obviously Green King, I believe, are the biggest pub group in the country now.
No, I've written that in the update today. Just going back to Bruce's point, actually, I've just my notes here about the SIBA report. Again, they said that on average, the average small brewery is currently burning through £5,000 a month just on their overheads. That's the average. And of course, they're still paying VAT, they're still paying beer duty, rent and business rates. And SIBA reckon that only about 1 in 3 of those breweries have actually had any government support, and so the majority of them have had nothing, over the last 12 months. So it is pretty tough for them, isn't it?
Well, you have to say that decision not to allow pubs to sell takeout beer seems increasingly bizarre because people get it, they would come home, but a bit of money flowing through the pub, a bit of money flowing through the brewery. It does seem a very strange decision.
And that links nice. I just thought I'd plug one of my little local here. I'll just move us. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to move those that are watching it. A little story about a pub that's close to me, which is up in the Peak District at Waslow, the Greyhound Inn. Again, landlord there I'd really worked hard to get a really nice community pub. It's always in the good beer guide. In fact, it just won Summer 2020 Country Pub of the Year for our local area. Obviously being pretty much shut now, open a little bit over the summer, but obviously being out in the sticks, I think it was unlimited. So they've got this idea of trying to just create that community feel. So they've built a website pretty much overnight. There's some nice YouTube clips of them, kind of with the kids and the dogs trying to put a website together. And they have got together with quite a few of the breweries in the Peak District, which are all fairly small breweries. Some, again, quite a range really. And it seems to be going really well. And they kind of launched a couple of weeks ago. Had a few things in our local papers. So I think they'll be able to offer. They're offering 70 beers at the moment. It's fun, with about 5 or 6 breweries that are involved. So, and one of them is Beartown, which I've talked about, but some of them as well. So, just thought it was a good story. And then the last bit of news, just this thing this week about the BBC that the archaeologists in Egypt have found a brewery that is 5,000 years old, which is quite amazing, really. Doing excavations in a place called Abydos in Egypt, and they found what they think are kind of 40, whatever they are, brew pots, mash tubs, and it's clear that beer was being brewed. It was probably a barley beer, so a bit like Gold Label being brewed. And that got me thinking, actually, because I've read about this before, and we always kind of, I don't know, perhaps wrongly, we kind of associate ancient civilizations with wine, Romans with wine. Although, again, I was watching the Big Dig thing last night, and they were saying, no, beer in Newcastle was massive, and they were drinking that much of it. They had to keep ordering more beer for the garrisons that were all on Hadrian's Wall. And a bit deeper read here. So the Hebrew term that is used in the Bible, for example, is shachar, which translates as strong drink. But actually, if you look at kind of the derivative of that, that's a barley beer, that term shachar. And so it's likely that a lot of the things we kind of associate with the Bible, like the wine, for example, was probably beer. So Jesus probably turned water into barley beer, not wine. And similarly with the Last Supper, it's probably more than likely it was beer that they were drinking and not wine. And
grain was far more available than grapes.
And barley especially. And it was only in the 17th century when shall we say, the snobbish English, whatever they were, pastors, etc., who felt that beer was a common, too common a drink, and so they like translated it into wine, and that stuck. So it's interesting that beer has always been probably seen as the kind of the low class drink, and wine slightly more superior, and some of that I guess is being backed up by religions working like that. So I just thought it was interesting, so we can have a look at that and come back. And then I mentioned Mission Butlers. So
before we go, we should mention that I feel obliged to mention that York's longest serving landlord passed away this week.
Oh, you mentioned that, Bruce. Yeah.
Gordon Watkins was 71. He was the landlord of the Eber Inn, a pub well known to thousands of people, either before or after visiting York Racecourse. If you've been to a funeral at York Crematorium, you've probably been there. But it was also the last tenanted Sam Smith's person the entire estate. So from now on, every single pub in the Sam Smith's estate will now be managed because he was the last person to have a tenancy agreement. So that was really, really sad. It was a cracking pub. He'd done it for 40 years. I think he was only 32 when he went there. He made it all look incredibly easy. He was always there at the bar. Had a word for everybody. His food was great. His portions were massive. The quality was great. And I say it was a sad day for all of us here at York because everybody knew him.
Sadly, won't be able to give him a decent wake as well, Bruce.
Yeah.
Very much so. That has been raised a few times. Yeah, it'd been a big day in the pub there.
And again, you do worry, don't you, that certainly things like racing, certainly people going to races might be a while before that comes back. Again, a pub like that, when you've lost the corner pin of it, how that pub might survive going forward. It's a fair way out of York, isn't it, Bruce?
Yeah, it's at Bishopthorpe. Bishopthorpe's a very prosperous, large village.
So locals probably might still support it. Yeah.
It has got 3 pubs but the essence of the pub's gone now, really. That's a great shame, yeah.
Right, so let's get on to tonight's main focus, which is talking a little bit about trips around the East Riding of Yorkshire. So again, the ridings, just again, people that may not be totally familiar with this, Yorkshire was split into 3 ridings. Apparently that's a Viking word about how they were administered. East Riding, North Riding or North Yorkshire, and the West Riding. Obviously it's a bit different now because there's South Yorkshire. We had this weird thing called Humberside for a while that's now gone. So East Yorkshire is a fairly big chunk of Yorkshire actually, but probably less populated, although I suppose North Yorkshire in there as well. It's a very much an agricultural, mainly agricultural, with a little bit of industry down where obviously the Humber comes in from Hull through Brough to Goole. Again, interestingly, obviously where we come from, Malton and Norton was traditionally on the old border of the East and North Riding. So Malton was the north side of the river, and that was always in the North Riding, and Norton was on the East Riding. Again, that's changed slightly now because they've moved the boundary to carry with North Yorkshire. Takes in quite a lot of the seaside towns, so Bridlington, Hornsey, Withensea on that east coast. So some link there as well. And then some very nice market towns like Driffield and Beverley, and that's kind of what we'll talk about here as well as we go through it. So certainly for us was certainly somewhere we would go. I think when we were kids, Nick, probably Hull was the big city. We never went to Leeds. Hull was probably where we'd go, wasn't it? If we were going Christmas shopping or something, it was always we always went to Hull. Which was for us was a 40-mile drive, as Nick mentioned, over the Yorkshire Wolds, which are a very nice bit of the country. Again, not a massive tourist or not probably well known as other areas, but lots of lovely rolling landscape, big vistas. Nick mentioned there. What's his name? The artist David Hockney doing those images of it.
The trees and the silhouettes against the horizon, the landscape.
And obviously fantastic country for growing things like barley and wheat, which is why brewing has always been very much part of it. And in fact, we still do have 2 fairly large maltsters, one in the north in Knapton, which is just halfway between Malton and Scarborough, and a bigger one just out, I think Munster's just outside Bridlington, which I think is one of the biggest malting processors in the country. And a lot of
Selby as well in the town centre.
Yeah, and a lot of theirs obviously goes out and is used to brew most of our beer in the UK, which is interesting as well. So we've probably got 2 routes here that we probably would talk about, and which ties in a bit with our geography really as well. The route we've most used is the north-south route, where you start from Scarborough or more likely Seamer, because that's where the kind of the railway splits. Seamer's just a little village outside of Scarborough where the York line splits into the Hull line. And that kind of brings you down the coast for the first half, and then dives in country and picks up Driffield and Beverley. And then for folk like Bruce coming maybe from York or Leeds, you come on that west to east route, which takes you via Selby and then into Hull as well. So the route north to south is the one that with three of us have probably done the most. So we're going to focus mainly on that. And I think, Bruce, we've been honest, there's probably more to do and see on that coastal route, isn't there? With all those stops.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's Farley's worth to stop. Bempton, you could jump off and go see the colony of all the puffins and things there. It's about 25-minute walk from the station. That's quite a brilliant thing to do, isn't it? Yeah, so yeah, much more scenic, undoubtedly. Not being, Selby's got its instances, hasn't it? And I say the other thing we should possibly consider as well is at the end of this is maybe chucking in the alternative of the bus to Hull from York, stopping off en route, because there's some great stops on there, isn't there?
Yeah, and we're looking at about an hour and 25 minutes if you went from Scarborough to Hull direct via the train, and then Leeds to Hull's about an hour. So I guess York's a bit less than that, is it? About 40 minutes, something like that. And we'll keep through. So we'll quickly just mention the kind of York Leeds to Hull route and talk mainly. I think we'd probably reckon that Selby is the only place probably to jump off and look at some of the pubs that are in there. TransPennine do the route from Scarborough to Hull. I think they probably do the route as well, do they? From TransPennine Express. Sorry, Northern.
Northern. From York to Hull,
route, isn't it? Yeah, to work it through there.
The shiny new trains, they keep the last remaining oldest trains in the fleet for the poor old Hull line. I'm sure the people are well fed up. They've got the ancient trains on that one.
And so we mentioned if you're coming from the west, then probably Selby, somewhere where you want to stop off. If you're coming from the north, then we probably recommend, we would have talked about Bridlington, and we will in a minute, but it's probably not worth stopping there now. And we'll come on to that. Probably suggest that you stop off maybe in Driffield and possibly, and definitely in Beverley. And then
depends if you want to see the seaside or not.
Yeah, well, you see the sea from the train, don't you, for the first bit, and then
not really.
Coming past the KCOM Stadium, well, you do when you go to Filey, don't you? You can't miss the sea. KCOM Stadium, you come past that, and then you come into the Paragon Station, which I always think is a fantastic station, and a jaunty statue of the Port Laureate, Philip Larkin, waving at you, who was the librarian, I understand, in Hull for a while. So in terms,
briefly, was very miserable apparently as well.
So I've suggested that if you're going to stop off, then Selby might be the place. Now, again, we've probably not been there lots and lots of times. There are 3 pubs listed in the Good Beer Guide. And I'll be honest and say, I don't think I've been to any of these 3 pubs because they're all fairly new. So I'm hoping that maybe Bruce may recognise them. And if not, we can certainly, I've got some notes at top of.
Yeah, I've been to the Doghouse on the Jack Flow. Yeah, Doghouse is great because it really gave people in Selby an outlet to go and get a good choice of real ale and craft beers. It's got a great little vibe in there. The Bellflower is a town, it's an old furniture shop. So it's big, it's roomy, it's quite airy. You can see that from there. And it's as Wetherspoons go, it's one of those, the shop transformation, but they made it a lot more colourful, invested a lot more than some of the shop transformations they do. I remember being in Bournemouth a couple of years ago, they transformed the shop, and God, it was black carpets, black walls. But the Bellflower was really quite fun. And of course, the other one to mention as well is the Cricketers. That's the Soul Sam Smith's pub in Selby Town Centre. It's a big, long, narrow pub. And gets to get lots of characters. Possibly since they put £1 in every pint, I dare say lots of those have moved the business to the giant Bellflower. But the Cricket just be a cracking pub.
I mean, Selby's quite a well-heeled town, isn't it? I always felt it's it's a strange town. I guess it's kind of, don't know, it's a bit in between. I mean, Google says it's a market town in North Yorkshire. It's 14 miles of south on the River Ouse, with a population of around about 14,000. And in fact, I didn't know this. It was actually in the West Riding till 1974. History around shipbuilding, obviously being on the Ouse. And
the Isle of Wight ferry, the Isle of Wight ferry, I believe, is still the one that's running now. The bigger one, the slower one, that was still built at the shipyard in Selby. Transport and agriculture. So we mentioned malt and barley. So again, I think a lot of malt and barley was shifted from Selby in that bygone days, and it sits on quite a large coal field as well. And certainly when we were younger, coal mining was quite a big thing around this area, and linked to that was power generation. So there's a massive power generator, power station at Drax,
which I know is now, I think they've moved that to biofuel now, for obviously coal's gone. And I remember playing rugby there, and they came up with a school or a club, but there's a rugby pitch right next to those cooling towers. And it was always like a microclimate. It was like playing in Hong Kong, because it was obviously all the steam coming out of those towers. And I think, that was I think that generated something like a fifth or a sixth of most of England's energy at one point.
Yeah, the three power stations, Drax, Eggborough and Ferrybridge, the three sisters, used to generate 7% of Bringland's power. Eggborough's been decommissioned, I think, now, hasn't it?
But they're all coal-based, weren't they? So it's a fairly compact town. Again, those that are watching on YouTube, the Abbey kind of dominates the centre of the town. It's a nice town in that there aren't many big buildings, so the Abbey just stand out, doesn't it? There aren't any high-rise skyscrapers. Well, not skyscrapers, but you know what I mean, office blocks. And it also had a swing bridge, which the Abbey, actually, I'm trying to mention this. Abbey was built in something like 1067, 1068, so it's Norman. And was one of the first ones that obviously William the Conqueror people built. And then I remember it because it famously had a toll bridge across the Ouse, and it was a privately owned toll bridge, and it used to cost you 7p to go either way. And so it used to be a massive traffic jam trying to get through Selby, because there used to be these blokes stood in the middle of the bridge, and you have to stop and wind your window down and find 7p. And apparently that continued till 1990, I think it continued. And then they did build a new bypass in 2004, and I think in the end the council bought out whoever owned the swing. I think there's one of those left, actually. It's simply because obviously Hull and Liverpool are quite closely linked across the M62, and there is still, it's not in Liverpool, it's on the Manchester Ship Canal. There is still a similar swing bridge, a place called Barton, where you still have to pay a toll to go over that bridge. It's always famous because whenever they shut the M6 and you can't go over the Thelwell viaduct, you have to go via Barton. And again, there's always massive queues. And the locals keep petrol bombing the little kiosk, because it just means that people living on that road just get absolutely snarled up. So every now and then they just burn down the kiosk and they can't take it. So Peel Ports now own that bit of the ship canal. So that was interesting as well. So yeah, the three pubs that are listed in the Good Beer Guide we kind of mentioned. There's number one, the Crescent, which is again a fairly new conversion. Just reading my notes now here as well, and that's actually an old mill brewery. It was actually, this was a pub. It was the Albion Vault, apparently, which I think I probably have been in when it was that. But it's now one of the few, well, not one of the few, I think it's about 15 Old Mill brewery pubs. And I'm just going to come on that in a minute, because Old Mill, again, is certainly a brewery that in the good old days we used to drink quite a bit of. Bruce has mentioned the Wetherspoons, which is called the giant bellflower, which apparently is a very rare plant, which is found on the banks of the Ouse, which again was news to me. And Selby has some famous ex-botanist, a guy called Thomas Johnson, who first saw it. And then Bruce has mentioned the Doghouse Craft Beer Cafe, which again is the town tap for a local farm brewery called Little Black Dog, which again makes some quite interesting beers as well. So I think most of the write-ups call the Doghouse very quirky, Bruce, which is kind of what the writer, which I think what you said, wasn't it, really?
Nice. It's got a real good vibe. I was saying the cricketers has a real, traditional feel to it. I'd definitely recommend looking at the cricketers, the Sam Smith published.
So probably worth jumping off, having a quick walk around the marketplace, look at the Abbey, and then I think most of those bars I mentioned are pretty much on that central area, aren't they, around the Abbey or just off the Abbey. So just talk a little bit Old Mill, because it's one of those breweries that a lot of people may not have come across. Snaith is an interesting place. It's about halfway between Hull and Pontefract down the M62. And as we mentioned, malting was very big in this area, and the brewery is based in an old malting mill. And this quite amazed me, really. They're fairly, well, not newish, but they were set up in 1983. So interesting that they're quite a traditional brewery, but actually,
very traditional,
40 years old, so they're actually quite new in a way. The Old Mill Bitter, I think, is a really good example of a proper, balanced English bitter. But I'm really amazed that they have about 5, I think, permanent beers, but then they seem to do a seasonal beer every month. And that kind of ranges from strawberry blonde, obviously in the summer, to Santa's Midnight Moonshine. And they've just finished doing their January, which is called Black Jack, which again, apparently is quite a nice beer, and very, very seasonal. I noticed that they don't do anything over 5%. So blackjack is the strongest at 5%, but most of their beers are 3, 9, 4. So, you know, that kind of lower end. And interesting because I can remember I really used to enjoy the all mill bitter. I think it was often probably the guest beer that you'd have in some of the pubs that we used to go into. You know, like a Tetley's pub probably would have this as their guest beer. But
that ABV that you're talking about is normal in traditional breweries.
Yeah.
It's only because the craft brewers now doing 5.5, 6, 7% that, you know, you think, oh, around about 3.8 to 4.5 is rare. It's not. I mean, going back 10 years before the craft brewers were around, that was the ABV on most beers, apart from if they was doing a special darker beer, really.
Yeah, and I suppose that was part of that kind of workers' beer, wasn't it? You could, you know, you didn't want anything too strong. You wanted to quench your thirst. So a 3.9% bitter. We mentioned Boltmaker. I mean, Boltmaker is actually technically a mild. Same idea, wasn't it? It was a good beer. You could drink quite a bit of it. You know, if you had to get to work tomorrow morning, and like you say, you're not drinking some 7, 8, 9% stuff in a small can. So yeah,
because I mean, landlord was strong. I remember when we first started going on Keighley, and it was a case of, right, this is probably going to be the strongest beer we have all day, and that was at what, 4.3,
and that's 4.1. So it's not, you know. So yeah, I think a nice brewery. Again, it'd be a great place for us to maybe trick there. I don't think, again, it's one of those you probably have to drive to. I think they have.
You can get if you go to Selby, actually, you can get the
train out towards kind
of
Gould.
Goes every hour, and it'll take you right through the middle of the It's a lovely little town, but bizarrely only has about 2 trains a week that stop, I think, on a Saturday.
And they have about 14 pubs.
Other Nellies have a bizarre. They do have a bizarre approach to the pubs they buy. That they seem to have some of the big old roadhouse pubs in South Yorkshire. They bought. Me and Nick saw one in Rotherham, didn't we? And then they've got another very similar in Mexborough. These huge pubs, and even though they take them over, these, I suppose initially maybe thought, well, there's room to expand, maybe put rooms, but these vast places, and I'm quite surprised to see that the one in Selby there, the Crescent, because that's so unlike.
Quite different, isn't it? Yeah.
And then, how many is in York? Is just the one near you?
Just the Victoria now, that's a lovely pub, man, isn't it?
And I think they have one in Chesterfield as well. I read, and then like you say, mainly South Yorkshire. West Yorkshire, and then a few.
So at least 2 in Hull. Certainly, when you're going on the Beverley Road, there's at least sort of like Corner Street boozers. There's at least one I can think of, and they used to have the
Siemens Mission.
Siemens Mission, but you reckon it's closed now?
I think it was last time I was there. That was a cavernous building, wasn't it? It was massive.
Yeah.
So worth looking for that if you see those beers, and certainly if you see their bitter, I'd definitely recommend having a drink of that one. So if we then let's focus on that north to south journey. So for us, we'd be getting the train from Malton or York, and like I said, we'd get off at Seymour, and then we'd wait for the whole bound train. If you're starting from Scarborough, then quite handily you've got the Scarborough. Is it the head of steam? No, Scarborough. Is it Scarborough Tap or head of steam at Scarborough? I always get confused.
Wait, it's on the station.
Yeah.
It's a place you can buy beer on the station.
And if you're there in good time, you can maybe go up to Stumble Inn, which is a little bit further up from the station, which is probably recommend that. Is there
10-minute walk maximum?
I think there's probably a train about every hour as well, isn't there, on that route? Throughout the day.
Double the frequency as well.
Yeah. More than that, I would have thought Northern Rail. Yeah.
So we would suggest that you probably miss out Filey, unless, like Nick said, you want to see the sea. Filey's quite an old-fashioned seaside town. There are a couple. I think there's a couple of new micro bars opening up, but nothing that's probably worth. And it's a bit of a trek from the station to get down to the kind of front, isn't it? And then again, Filey's a bit weird because most of the town's like up on the top, and then you've got to get down onto the beach. Brid, we are going to talk about because obviously it's an interesting old sea town, and it did have a fantastic station buffet, but we'll come back at that in a minute. So the line then swings in after Brid and goes towards Driffield, comes in landing to the Wolds. Driffield, definitely worth getting out of Driffield. Again, it's fairly compact, and then definitely Beverley is a must. And again, we'd probably suggest if you were coming from York or Leeds, Bruce, maybe stop at Selby, get into Hull, but then go out to Beverley, have an hour, and then come back into Hull and do that way, because that's probably worth doing that as well. So Bridlington, which I think, well, we've learned through Brexit, is the lobster capital of Europe. Apparently, I didn't know that, but there we go.
Crabs.
Lots of crabs and lobster.
Famous for crabs.
Country.
A little bit of a faded. I don't know. It's kind of coming back a little bit. There's quite a lot of work going on the promenade. Quite a big resort. Again, a little bit like Scarborough. It's got kind of north bit and a south bit, which are quite different. The north bit is a bit more lively, like it is in Scarborough. The south bit is a bit more genteel with the spa and then long, fairly quiet, empty beaches. Most of the town is huddled around the harbour, which again is quite a big harbour, quite a busy harbour. And as we said, it used to have a fantastic station buffet, one of the only two remaining proper Georgian buffets, the other one being at Staley Bridge, which I'm sure we'll talk about next week. But unfortunately, no longer. The landlady who had been there for 28 years sold up, wanting to retire. The railway company, I'm not quite sure who it is, with Network Rail, wanted to redevelop the station. So didn't want the lease to carry on for anybody else. So that came to an end, and all the fantastic stuff inside them was sold up at auction. And I've not been there for a while, but I don't know what's happening to it now. Is there anything happened to it?
I've not been for a couple of years. I mean, it's a shame because it's fitted so well to the station. The staff also keep Bridlington Station washed with flowers in summer, don't they, Nick? And I'm just sad that they had that.
She'll have had a good retirement, because I did follow the auction online.
Yeah.
And the stuff went for a hell of a price. You always expect the railway Ironia stuff to go, but literally everything. I was interested in a couple of bits, and blimey, one of the best auctions, most successful auctions I've seen in a long time for all that sort of memorabilia stuff. So at least she should be having a good retirement now.
So I've got a couple of pictures up on, again, for those on YouTube. Luckily, I think me and Nick, we probably got there just before it closed, wasn't it, in 2019? So this is probably about this time of year, or maybe Easter. And we managed to get there, and it was it felt a bit like it was on its last legs then as well, wasn't it?
The beer wasn't good. It was obviously been sat in the pumps overnight, and it's one of those situations again. She knows probably that she should pull a pint off, but then she's saying, well, that's a pint down the drain, and that's £1.50 worth of profit. Us being strangers, she probably thought, well, they won't know any difference, but it wasn't great, I'm afraid.
So it was a two-roomed, listed, grade 2 listed. It was built in 1912, a split bar, so there's a bar kind of on either side. One bar, I think, focused on beer, which is the one that I've not got a picture of there. And then the one we've got was the food side of the bar. 2 rooms, quite similar, very kind of traditional. And as Nick said, lots and stuff up on the walls there, memorabilia, brewery mania stuff. And a little bit of kind of, time forgot, wasn't it? It was people called in there on the, when they're popping in or getting to the station. I think quite a few people went there as a bit of a trip, that it was one to tick off, a bit of a tick off one to go in there. Normally had a couple of beers, Nick, didn't it? I think probably World Top, we would probably drink at the time. So a bit of a shame, really. So anyway.
There'd have been more of a campaign to save it, really, wouldn't you?
I think there was, but I presume it was Network Rail were adamant that they wanted to redevelop the station. But I think people went to Bridlington because that, especially this time of year, because of this, wasn't it? Because it was well known. And if you'd been to Staley Bridge, then you'd probably want to say, well, I want to go to the other one, which is Bridlington. So there we go. So in terms of the beers on the bars that you've got in Brid, and again, Brid's got a little bit of a split because you've got the kind of the touristy bit, or the holiday makers bit, which is down, as I mentioned, down by the harbour. And then you've also got the Old Town, which is, I don't know, probably about a mile from the seafront, is it? A bit higher up as you kind of come in.
At least, yeah.
I mean, it'd be a long walk, wouldn't it? It'd be a long walk from, say, the harbour. So again, jump on a bus, or you can from the station. The station's about halfway, probably. And the Old Town, you may recognise from the recent, or the most recent Dad's Army film, because it was Warmington on Sea in that film that had quite a few famous people in it, didn't it? And the Board Inn, which is on the main high street of the Old Town, was the one that featured, and they seem to have had quite a lot of money, and they've just refurbed it all. So I guess it was quite lucrative being in Dad's Army. The ones that we would main focus on around the harbour, you've got quite a nice Wetherspoons, which is the Prior John, which is named after John de Twang, who was the prior at the medieval monastery. It's quite a compact spoon, isn't it, Nick? But
no, they've just expanded that because there was an old chapel next door, Wesleyan Chapel or something like that. So they've actually bought and knocked through. A bit like I mentioned, they'd done in Keighley, where they bought the property next door and knocked through into it. So I've not been since they knocked through. So once again, I don't know whether they made that sort of like an indoor-outdoor beer garden.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'll have doubled the size of the existing offering, as it were.
And I think just be careful because there are quite a few pubs in Bridge that look like Wetherspoons, but they're not, aren't they? There's quite a lot of
that's right.
carbon copies.
Look like that, yeah.
Yeah, which obviously for the tourist trade, and so it's always fairly busy. It's just off the kind of main shopping area. There's quite a few good pubs just as you come up from the harbour, traditional pubs. The one that camera kind of ranked is called the Stackhouse, which is down a little bit of an alleyway, but again, always gets a fantastic write-up. That's just up from the harbour. And then quite a weird one, but is the Marine Bar, which is part of the Expansion Hotel. This is up on the North Promenade, which you'd never really think there'd be a real ale pub there. No. But actually, it's not bad, actually. And if it's and there's a picture there I've got on there. If it's a nice sunny day, you can sit outside. You can look over the North Bay all the way around to Flamborough Head and Danes Dyke. It's quite a nice place to go. And Nick, when we've been in there, they've normally had a pretty good range of beers, haven't they? And been pretty full as well.
And I think they do a camera discount. I think last time me and you went in, I'm sure I used my camera card to get the discount in there. So, yeah.
You can park, if you've driven up there, you can park literally outside as well, which is quite useful. Up on there, I think you get 3 hours parking if you've got one of those discs as well. And then this other one I've got on here is the old shipping, which, if I remember rightly, is kind of up from head towards the old town. And this again is a camera listed pub. It's in the GBG. I've also got a lot of Sutcliffe photos, and Sutcliffe was a Victorian photographer. Again, if you've been to Whitby, you'll probably have seen his photos. And this pub's got a lot of Sutcliffe photos of Whitby and of Bridlington as well. So worth popping in as well. So I think it's, if you've got time to spare, if it's a summer's day where you've got plenty of time, and maybe slightly before lunchtime, so it's not too busy with all the holiday makers, jump off, look, kind of, walk past the old buffet bar with a little bit of a remorse, and then maybe jump into a couple of these pubs and then get back on the train.
See the seaside, buy a stick of rock.
Yeah.
Dress crab.
And as we mentioned, what then happens is the train or the rail swings then in, and the first next point of call is Driffield. And Driffield is kind of the agricultural centre, I think, of East Yorkshire.
The Queen of the Wolds, I like to call it.
Queen of the Wolds. And actually, quite a few people call it, it's referred to as Great Driffield as well, which again is one of those little suffixes that kind of make you feel even better as well. Place that we'd kind of pass through a little bit. We'd probably go through it on the way through to other places. You probably wouldn't go there just for an afternoon. We'd probably go to Beverley instead, but I think it's got a bit going for it. And again, I think I've put my notes here, for a town with 13,000 population, it's got 14 pubs listed by Cameras Watts Pub. So it's doing something right. They don't all get fantastic write-ups, but there's plenty of pubs in Driffield. So again, worth dropping off, and worth having a trip around as well. Again, Spoons is okay, Nick. That's probably where you've probably drank the most, I think, recently, which is the Benjamin Fawcett, which I think is I've got a picture of it somewhere there. Apparently it was a licensed premises before. It looks quite new, but I think it's probably older than it looks.
No, it certainly wasn't a traditional pub. I think it was some sort of supermarket or something like that at one point. Could have even been a co-op. Yeah, because you've got the car park behind it. Interesting aviation stuff in there. I can't remember which manufacturers it was. Could have been Blackburn, but there's bits of aircraft and a lot of line drawings in there. So, as Tim likes to do, he likes to put local history into a lot of his pubs. So, if you're interested in military aviation, then it's worth popping in.
And then obviously this area of the Wolds was had quite a big part in World War II. Bomber airports, were they airports
on the coast, Lisset, places like that. Bombers that were struggling to get back over the Channel, they had emergency landing strips all down that way, Carnaby. They also used FIDO, which was a fog dispersal system where they had pipelines of petroleum down either side of the airstrip, and they would set it alight if it was foggy. And the heat from the burning petroleum would lift the fog off the airfield. So it was known as FIDO. So majority of them are disused now. There's a couple of private ones still knocking around. Yeah. But the majority of the airfields have gone back to what they were before, grass fields and things like that.
And just for Wetherspoon trivia, Benjamin Fawcett apparently was a 19th century wood block colour printer, and he's very famous for the wood block pictures of birds that he did for quite a lot of those. Like those fancy Victorian, nature books. He did quite a lot of that as well. The Butcher's Dog is a fairly new one. That is a one-room micro pub with, I think, a good reason. I think, Nick, you and my dad have been in there, which you weren't.
Yeah, I felt sorry. I felt sorry for the owners, actually, because it's ironic that normally it's Dad who brings the sons up on what drink they're going to have, but in fact me and Mike weaned our dad onto real ale. He was maybe a little drop of John Smith or Sam Smith, or it was all keg stuff anyway, and gave him the taste for the real ale. So we popped in there just for a quick one. So I had a pint, he had a half. It's no butcher's shop, so it isn't big inside. You can probably get about 12 to 16 people sat down. We walked in and the spot was just about full. We got the last table for 2 people. In the space of time it took me to drink my pint and he drank his half pint, all the other folks weren't really engaged in conversation. They were either singles or couples. A lot of them were sat there reading, hugging, half and half pint. And I said to my dad as we walked out, I said, well, in half an hour, that last behind the bar has taken £4 off us. I said, all the rest of them are sat in there enjoying the ambience and enjoying the heating, but they're basically not drinking, not spending any money. I said, her wage and the overheads, if it hadn't been for us, certainly wouldn't have been covered. And I think that's the problem with some of these little micro pubs nowadays, is that, the owners do work hard to try and make them, almost a community base, as it were. But I think people who go in there, come on, play the game, at least spend a £5 or a tenner, over a couple of hours, and don't just go and buy half a pint and sit and read a book for an hour and a half and make it last all day, sort of thing. I felt sorry for him, but I'll certainly go back in there again when I'm in Driffield again.
Well, I think the thing is you need to go on a Sunday, because apparently on a Sunday they offer a free cheese board, and I've got a nice little picture there on the YouTube one. So apparently you can just help yourself. You go in there and they put them free. But it's nice. I do just get people to go in there and have a drink as well. So.
All the people you'll be talking about, Nick, will have Tupperware boxes when they're back.
They
got the crack.
Picture all the cheese. I've got a picture of the Bell there. Now, the Bell is certainly when I've been in the Bell. The Bell's quite a large old coaching inn that dominates the kind of, and I always felt Driffield was a bit of I always thought it's one big long street, which it's not now. There's a bit more. There's a supermarket, isn't there, on the main street there, but it always feels like one of those kind of long thin street ones. So and the Bell has got quite a nice bar with some of the old, I think it's got the smoke room kind of glass and stuff, and apparently they're very good with whiskies. They have lots of $100 whiskies in there as well. There's
a sort of culture in Yorkshire market towns, isn't there? The bars being used by everybody and being sort of a sense of community.
And I think that hotel's been done up quite a bit. I know it's got quite a nice spa. If you look on the thing, it would be quite a nice place to be if you fancy the weekend. Quite a nice place to stop, really, because Drifield's, I suppose, quite good because you're halfway between kind of Hull, Scarborough, so it's not a bad place to stop off, really. But it's a bit infamous, Driffield, because in Ian Merchant's The Longest Crawl, which we probably need to just have a quick chat about. So this was a book that Ian Merchant, who was a kind of a ex-punk rocker journalist kind of guy, wrote this book back in 2007 about a month-long pub crawl, where he and his mate Perry started off in the Isles of Scilly, and travelled all the way up through the UK and ended up in Shetland, drinking at the furthest pub north you can in the United Kingdom. And it's an interesting book. It a little bit frustrates me. There's no index in it, so you can't kind of look and say what they say about this. And I guess it's less of a beer guide, more of a a journey through England, really, and pub culture.
Road trip and a bit of information.
But infamously, he went to Driffield, and they stayed on the way to Leeds, and they stayed in the Bell. And the lady there, the receptionist, she recommended 3 pubs, and the 3 pubs she recommended were the Tiger, which is still there, which I think was a Sam Smith, maybe had been a Sam Smith pub when this book was written. Apparently that pub was empty. And in fact, some of the more recent TripAdvisor trips say it's always empty, but it isn't. It is in Watts pub. The Full Measure, which they didn't stay very long because it was full of schoolboys, not just schoolboys, but schoolboys that's in school uniform. and not dressed up for a school disco. They were literally 14, 15-year-olds probably drinking. And then the final pub that was advised them was the Star. And as they walked into the Star, which again is still there now, it's around the corner from the Bell, they came across a young man threatening his girlfriend by the throat. And they intervened, and Ian Merchant got into a fight with this guy, and got him off this young lady. And in the end, the bloke was carted away by the police. So it's quite Driffield gets quite infamous, really, in this book here, really. So again,
farmers lads for you.
Yeah. So the longest crawl again, if you're into, you can get. I think you can get one for £3 I looked on Amazon at the moment. So it's not a bad read. And it kind of does what we're talking about in a kind of in a more kind of monthly thing, and certainly has got some nice little information. Again, there's quite a nice bit on Burton. They go to Burton, and they spend a lot of time eating pot scratchings after visiting the pot scratching factory somewhere in the West Midlands. So,
hey, you talking about food, Mike, and cheese and biscuits just reminded me. Remember our first episode when we talked about the Christmas present that you got me?
Oh yeah.
The Openshaws.
Yeah.
I think they run out best before this month. So whilst you keep talking, I'm just going to go and get myself a little snack.
You better eat them, yeah. And again, Bruce, I need to go back one, Bruce, because I've also been putting on our write-ups for these. Underneath the pubs for each town, I've also started to put Bruce's recommendations for food. So Driffield, an area, it's quite famous for Stewart's of Driffield and their fish and chip shop. So I think you can heartily recommend Stewart's of Driffield, Bruce.
That's the flagship branch, isn't it? They are really, really good. I've never tried it. But I'm told that the Bell Hotel's famous for its steak and ale pie as well.
All right, okay. So Stewart's of Driffield, they've got quite a few fish and chips across the area, haven't they? Probably go.
Yeah, there's one in Malton, isn't there?
Malton,
yeah,
Wet Wang,
Bridlington. They are very exceptionally good quality to get a chance to try them.
And Nick is just showing his Openshaw's Ploughman's lunch in a packet.
Delicious anytime, it says. Anytime delicious. Right, so let's have a look inside.
Bringing the cellar bar alive.
Just want some music now.
Don't forget to explain this to the podcast listeners, Nick, so that you can.
Right, okay. So I've got it the size of a crisp bag. It's Ploughman lunch snack pack. So I've opened it up. We have got a 2-pack of cream crackers. We have a triangle of Happy Cow cheese. Now, this particular bag is very, very moist because the silver skin pickled onions that you get are always drenched in vinegar. And I've just opened it on myself and I'm covered in vinegar now. But they do provide you with a little plastic knife
very good, yeah,
to spread your cheese with. But I can tell this particular snack is going to be very, very vinegary. But anyway, hey ho, let's carry on and we'll dig into it. So yes, keep chatting and I'll show you.
So whenever the pubs reopen, look out for them. We definitely know they sell them in the Titanic. The Greyhound certainly have those behind the bar there. I'm not seeing them that often in pubs, but
I wonder why. Yeah.
Right. So that's Driffield. So you get back on the train from Driffield, and the next stop is Beverley. And I think this is a must. This is a bit of a beer mecca. And to be honest with you, I would say if you can book a hotel in Beverley. Spend it, maybe use that as your home, as your overnight stop. Might not be as cheap as maybe stopping outside Hull. I don't think there's a Travelodge or a Premier Inn.
No, they haven't got anything like that yet.
No, they're quite
old. Premier Inn opened in Beverley about
there is,
2 years ago. Yeah.
Right, okay, well, there you go then. So you got no excuse.
Yeah, down near the station. Oh, the other one is Thwaites Thwaites do brew, but they've moved into pubs and hotels now. So they took over one of the big hotels that was really on its last legs. So they've taken that over and made it very nice now. Not cheap, but if you want to treat yourself, then there's the Thwaites Hotel.
I think if you want a pub experience, you've got to sit in the White Horse Nellies at closing time in Beverley, and then walk back through those fantastic medieval streets back to where you are. I've always stopped in the Lairgate Hotel, which is just behind the marketplace, which is quite a nice little hotel, and had a nice little bar that you can always go to as well. So Beverley is, again, I think if Driffield is the queen of the Wolds, then I think Beverley's the king of East Yorkshire. It's a fantastic town. A bit of everything again, hasn't it? It's got It's got minsters, it's got markets, it's got good pubs, it's got a
Independent
race
shop,
course.
Sweet and drink, yeah.
It's got a
Race course
fantastic,
is walkable, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, medieval common, the Wildwood, which again is, you know, a great place. Wheatwood, sorry, which is a great place to go off, and a golf course. The race is a good place there. The races always have real ale on. Whenever I've been to Beverley races, they normally have one of the local breweries doing a pop up there as well, which is great. So all in all, a great place really to go and spend some time. And I always reflect on there because when I first left university, I actually had a job interview on Beverley. I actually had a whole week of job interviews that I kind of lined up. And the first one was in Hull. Then I went to Nottingham. Then I went to Sandbach. Then I came to Stoke. And the day after, I was supposed to be going to Beverley for a job interview for a job teaching at the school in Beverley. And I, on the Thursday, I came to Stoke and I accepted the job at Stoke. And I always wondered if I'd gone to Beverley, would I have got the job in Beverley? And would I have been living in Beverley now, which is apparently one of those, you know, the Times newspaper's best place to live in the whole world. So anyway,
probably
there we
one
go.
of the most underrated towns, to be fair, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know, so few people have been, yet it's got so much to offer.
Yeah,
I mean, it's fantastic. And really, the White Horse Nellies has to be one of the 10 finest pubs in the country, hasn't it?
Yeah, and the Good Beer Guide has got 7 listed in Beverley, which I think is, you know, is reflects. But there are loads more pubs in Beverley, and we've never even got anywhere near to. I think, you know, getting anywhere around probably more than half of them. So a great place to kind of base yourself. Great place to go, certainly for a weekend or have a night over there as well. Loads of character wear. Think of red pan tiles and snickelways. I put in my notes here. Which is what Beverley is, isn't it? Lots of really old, fantastic buildings, lots of red pan tile roofs, lots of what we call snickelways in York and Yorkshire, little passages between streets. A racecourse mentioned, and the town sandwiched between 2 very impressive bits of churchy, which you've got St Mary's at the north end of the town, and then you've got the Minster at the south end of the town, a kind of mini York Minster. It was walled, Beverley, wasn't it? And you've got a few bits, certainly the bar within, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So it's got a bit of everything, really nice. A really good place to go. So I thought we'd start. Well, first of all, the station's quite impressive as well. It's quite a weird station, isn't it? In that it's only a 2-platform station, but it's completely encased in a red brick building. So it's always quite a nice place to arrive, isn't it, in Beverley Station?
Yeah, it is. Got the open footbridge there, yeah.
Yeah, I thought I'd written something about this station somewhere, but I can't find it now.
The entire thing about Beverley is there's nowhere in Beverley there's no way neglected, is there? No parts of it decaying. It's just an incredibly well kept and well preserved town, isn't it?
Yeah. So,
sorry, chap, can you hear me munching on my cream crackers?
No, you're all right. So I thought we'd start with the LYs, the Dollies and the Nellies, which we've always kind of known, really. So, and they're quite close together, and these are towards the north end of the town. So if we start with Dollies, which actually
Northwest.
is the Royal Standard Inn, which is a small pub just as you come from what's called, and a fantastic name, it's called the North Bar Within. What a street name. And again, for those that can see the pictures, I've got a little picture bottom left there. A little bit like one of those mini York gates that you get in York in the medieval walls of York. There's one of those in Beverley, and just beyond that is a fantastic little, I guess, Georgian streetscape. I think is that ice cream stop still there,
No,
Bruce?
sadly not.
Closed.
Right, there used to be a fantastic gelato ice cream place, wasn't there? Just as you went through the walls.
They're now making the ice cream again. They're at Shiptonthorpe in East Yorkshire. You can go to the factory.
Right.
They've got lots of, but sadly the very famous ice cream shops in almost next door to Royal Standard, that has gone. That was part of the day out, wasn't it?
And then the Royal Standard, or we always call it as Dolly's, which I presume was an old landlady that was there in the good old days, is a pub on your left-hand side. I always feel it's an old Tetley's pub just because it's got some of those kind of old Tetley settings, but I can't confirm that. I've suggested that you do this at either end. You do Dolly's at the start of your Beverley trip, and you do Nellies at the end. You need to get in Dolly's early, and you need to get in the snug, which is you go to the front door, turn left straight away. And there is a 1-table little snug, isn't there? With a bar. And it's one of those classic old, which again, I always think a bit like Tetley pub, a bit like a Spotted Cow in Malton. A very small, 6, 7 people and it's full. So you need to get in there when it's early, when it's just you guys, and have a great time. The pub outside around the back's a bit more disappointing. Still good beers, but definitely worth popping into the Dolly's, the Standard Inn. So I'm going to leave Nellies because we're going to come back to Nellies because that's the kind of the pièce de résistance, isn't it, of Beverley, really. And as I say, I think you've got to go to Nellies as it's getting dark because is it still gaslit in there?
Yeah.
So they still use
gaslight and open fires
and no electric lights apart from behind the bar.
That's right.
So it's always pitch dark in the middle of the day. We're honest, isn't it? It's always the windows are very small, but at night it's just got this atmosphere that you just really can't. You couldn't kind of recreate it, in some kind of dirty Nellies Irish
by a Hollywood film lighting person, isn't it? It's just astonishing. The feel of it when it's full of people, the whole feel of it's just fantastic, isn't it?
So if you are walking then from Dolly's towards the marketplace, if you bear left as you get to the large open, again, another fantastic market in Beverley when I think 2 or 3 days a week they have a market. On the left there, we'll go first to the Dog and Duck. The Dog and Duck is a free house on Ladygate. It is very red. It was built in 1930 as a John Smith pub. And apparently the same family now have had this for 45 years. And always feels like a family type of pub, really.
Yeah.
And they normally have at least 5 different cask beers on. And I think, Nick, you first probably got me going in the Dog and Duck many years ago.
Yeah, they always normally had landlord on and stuff like that. You're expecting real guest ales.
Yeah.
Nice firing on as you're walking through the door, the right-hand side there. Yeah, it's got that 1970s, 80s feel to it, red velour as it were.
Velour,
and, carpets on the floor and stuff like that, not stripped out and shaker styly.
And then if you walk out of that pub and you walk diagonally across the marketplace, if it's not a market day, you'll come to the Green Dragon, which is on the far side of the marketplace. There is a gold post box outside of it for some Beverley Olympian. I think, was it a rower or something from Beverley that won the gold medal, I think in 2012. Anyway, there's definitely a gold, one of those Royal Mail box outside. And the Green Dragon is that an M&B pub, isn't it? Green Dragon, we say? Yeah,
because they used to sell Nicholson's IPA in there. It's first time I realised it was one of the chains again, and it's undergone a few metamorphoses again. In terms of different. You can always tell with the food menus that it's a chain pub, but always a good range of real ales on in there. Big pub as well. It goes right the way through the back there, and until Wetherspoons hit town, I would have said the Green Dragon was probably one of the busiest pubs in Beverley, certainly on a weekend, with it being on the marketplace there. I think the Wetherspoons that is in the street behind has taken a little bit of their glory now, taking a little bit of the pressure off. But between them, you've got a 20-yard stagger, and on a good day you can expect to have a choice of between them 12, 15 real ales on. So
the website said they have 10 casts on at the Green Dragon, so it's a hell of a thing, isn't it?
Nice big blackboard behind the bar as well. Always have the blackboard there, as I spoke about a couple of weeks back, that you can see what they've got on, what it is, prices, refamiliarize yourself. Even if the pump clips keep changing, at least you can see from a distance, okay, they've got that beer on, rather than having to peer over somebody's shoulder to see what the pump clip is.
And I think it's as you say, it's quite a big pub, but lots of different rooms. And I always feel you can always find somewhere that suits you, really, isn't it? The front bar's quite busy. There's a bit of an outdoor bit, isn't like an indoor outdoor bit, isn't there?
Yeah, it's open plan, but there are different areas. Yeah,
which is always quite nice. And then if you carry on walking through the marketplace and you kind of go into what kind of narrows into kind of a very busy shopping street. The left of that towards the bus station, there is what claims to be Yorkshire's first ever micro pub, which is Checkers, which is in a former bakery. And this one definitely is a micro pub, isn't it? It literally is.
It looks like a sandwich shop.
Sandwich shop, yeah.
And it's like a sandwich shop in Cybros. They've not made, I don't think they've tried to make it like a pub at all. And it is a bit weird, but I remember it was there many, many years before, these micro pubs really started to take off.
Good for them.
So quite small, but again, fantastic range of beers and ciders in there. It's one of those places where the toilet's kind of behind the curtain kind of place. So again, you get to know everybody in the pub. Again, I think when we've been in, the staff behind have been great. What kind of things you got? You fancy? What try some of this. So again, well worth popping in and having a drink in there. Maybe having a couple of halves or doing a couple of samples and try and sample something different. They always have quite a range on from local breweries, so definitely worth in there. And then if you carry on then and head towards the Minster, which you'll see again dominates kind of Beverley's skyline. Again, it's another town where there's no really big buildings above 3 or 4 stories, so the Minster dominates. And as you're on the final approach on the left-hand side, there is the Monk's Walk, which again is definitely another atmospheric pub that's worth going to. Monk's Walk is a 13th century merchant's house, a bit of a passageway pub, so you get a passage that goes all the way through the pub, and then there are rooms on the right-hand side of it as well. And definitely a visit. And apparently had its own brewery back in the 19th century, but now again has a range of Yorkshire beers. And there's a picture of me there just emerging from the passageway. And I say, if you want to pop in the Minster, this is the closest pub to the Minster, literally, 50 yards away from the side of the Minster door. So again, a really good pub to go to, really, isn't it, as well? Is there anywhere else? I'm going to nip and have a pee. Is there any other pubs in Beverley that you guys have used?
Yeah, well, I said there's the Wetherspoons now. Wetherspoons always wanted to get into Beverley, but it took them a good couple of years, and they took over. I'm not sure whether it was a hotel. In fact, is it across Keys, Bruce? Is it the Keys? But it's just on a street that is parallel to what they call the Saturday Market.
Yeah, that multi-room pub, isn't it? That's one.
Yeah, and it's not bad again for a Wetherspoons. And in fact, the bars at the bottom end there, they've got some booths with high tables, so nice to get in there. And
maybe I was never the place. I was like, why on earth would you go to Wetherspoons in Beverley when you've got pubs like that to go?
Because Bruce, they always have local brews on. They always have Wooltop on. They always have Great Newsom on. They always have local beers on, and at a good price, sort of thing. We've had this discussion before, but you know what you're going to get at Wetherspoons. When
you can sit and drink in all that history, Nick, I'd have no desire to go line Wetherspoon, Tim Martin's.
Hey, if I've got 50 pence vouchers to use up, Bruce, then I'll use them, mate.
Right, let's go on to Nellies then. So again, if you watch, you look at the screen, that's the pub on the top left. Again, it's a Sam Smith's pub, so there's not a great deal of signage outside. And in fact, I know a lot of people have gone past it several times and missed it completely. And you've got to look out for a very decrepit old White Horse.
It's like a rocking horse, isn't it?
Door, yeah.
It's probably Humphrey's rocking horse from when he was a child.
So this is definitely a pub which, takes you back probably 200 years. As we mentioned, there's no electric lighting. It's all gaslit. The furniture is, well, let's just say you probably wouldn't find an antique shop. Nothing matches.
Mix and match.
Are full of clutter. There's some the rooms on the right are just, I don't know they'd probably be a slum, wouldn't they? They're probably condemned. Flagstones at kind of weird angles. Rooms maybe have one chair in them, and then just so it's an atmospheric place, really.
The darker it gets, the more people get in, the better. I mean, it's just it's more an experience to go to the pub. It's almost like you'd pay just to go in to experience it, wouldn't you? Really? Yeah. And you think recently you were going there, you could sit and get a pint of Dark Mile for £1.34. You still get it for £2.9 a pint. But you could get £2 and just immerse yourself in history, really.
You were saying about people taking their own food into the butcher's dog roast. I mean, you could cook yourself a meal in there, couldn't you? And the landlord wouldn't notice.
Yeah.
Use the heat from the gas lamps and get yourself in one of them little rooms where nobody ever ventures.
Full of old. I've got a picture one there, full of old ranges. Literally, like you say, with fires going. Again, I don't know. I probably have drank in all the rooms. I probably still get lost sometimes when you go to the loo.
Yeah.
Because you end up in some weird rooms around the back, don't you?
You can get lost with tea, you're right, yeah.
Last time me and Nick went, there is quite a bit of an area now they've built out the back. I wouldn't call it a beer garden, but there's quite a large area.
So yard for the smokers.
it does get rammed because obviously it's on the kind of whole university trip out thing. So certainly in the summer months, it can get very, very busy. You do get
There's the upstairs as well.
Yeah.
Upstairs is one big long room, and there's like a big fire at the far end with sofas, couches.
One big bar in the main kind of back bar room, but then it's got a couple of, I don't know whether they use them anymore. It did have some hatches, and I usually find you used to get served best at the hatches and trying to get into the bar.
Absolutely.
I don't know whether they're still there. So I think it's one of those where you've got to go. You've got to go. It's Nellies because that was the landlady for many, many years. So certainly all the locals call it Nellies and not the White Horse. So I think it is. It's definitely worth somewhere where I think you've got to go and experience at least once in your life.
If we manage to get this onto a YouTube channel after lockdown, I mean, the interesting challenge for us is going to be filming it because, of course, Mr. Smith won't allow you to film in any of his pubs. So we're going to get some kind of hidden camera to show.
But Bruce, it'd be pitch dark anyway. You'd just see shadowy bits in the background, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you could walk in there with a full camera crew and they wouldn't realise.
And it's always done good food, though, hasn't it? It's always been quite, again, famous for kind of great plates of kind of, traditional kind of liver and bacon.
Yeah.
Literally, Trencham portions, which again, you wonder what state the kitchen is in a building that looks like it hasn't changed since about the 13th century.
Well, no, because you see the stillage, you see where the barrels are. The cellar is open. The cellar is on ground floor level, and as you go through to the backyard or walk down the corridor where the loos are, you can see the barrels all set up, and the kitchen's just next to there.
So it's well worth trying to find out. In fact, the best thing, if you get to the Dog and Duck, if you carry on down that street from the Dog and Duck, you will get to the White Horse. The St. Mary's Church is over your left-hand shoulder as you're walking down. If you get to kind of the busy inner ring road, you've gone too far. Retrace your steps and keep looking for that White Horse. So
if you get really lost, then ask any of the locals for directions. It's no good asking for the White Horse.
No,
everybody refers to it as Nellies.
Nellies, yeah.
And
I say, some of my best nights, I'll be looking. In fact, the kind of square the circle. The school that I was going to go for that interview with back in 1990, I've actually been back to that school a few times and actually taught master classes for them. And they always put me up in the Lairgate Hotel. And therefore, me and my mate Johnny Ireland from Wigan used to spend quite a few hours in there on the night before, the night after. And I said that feeling of being in there at closing time, then coming out into a beautiful old town and wandering through the streets is definitely worth working on. So you then get on the train. In fact, there's a picture there of Nicholas on the train leaving Beverley and Beverley Minster in the background there. He's got a can of a punk IPA there from Brewdog, which more of that maybe a little bit later on when we talk about East Riding. And I think it's always a lovely little train journey there. You leave Beverley, you pass the canal, which kind of comes off the Ouse. You then come into suburbs of Hull through Cottingham, which has got a nice leafy part of Hull. I think I'd call it the West End of Hull or the Chelsea of Hull. There is a stop at Cottingham. You could get off there. There are some nice pubs there. They're all quite studenty, aren't they?
King William, innit? King Billy.
Yeah, that's a big student area of the town. A lot of the student accommodation is
hospitals there, a big hospital
as well. And again, a couple of nice pubs. But we'd probably stay on and I'd say you get to Paragon Station, and there's Nick just leaving the Northern train there. Again, a fantastic station, Hull. Obviously, not only a small element of what it used to be, but it's got the ubiquitous hotel attached to the station as well. Which I think is a bit refurb as well, isn't it? At the moment, in a classical Renaissance style, which is again worth looking at. Fantastic architecture. Our first stop, again, I know you're talking about spoons there, is probably the Admiral of the Humber, because that's literally 3 minutes in it from the station, which is a Wetherspoons pub. Typical kind of city centre. I think I've put here a typical cavernous city centre spoons full of out chaps netting their Stellas, or £2 for a fiver on a Monday. Miss Mondays, I've said here. There's a much more upmarket spoons, isn't there, in Hull? The 3 John Smiths.
Scots.
Sorry, 3 John Scott, sorry.
Named after 3 vicars of the same name.
That's right. And that used to be the post, that was in the old post office building, isn't it?
Yeah. main
I've
post
said
sorting office.
in my notes here, I've said, think Whitehall and Rule Britannia. Fantastic white stone, very powerful buildings, aren't they? All the area there, I guess, was when Hull was a Victorian port. It's quite a nice
typical port, yeah, just like Liverpool or Bristol.
Yeah, and as you were saying, Nick, both those spoons there, they were good range of Yorkshire beers, as we said, local beers. And again, you can't really go past the price of them. Probably just have one in the Admiral, as we normally do, and then get out quick, or have your breakfast.
And it's supposed to have a massive rooftop garden now as well, the Admiral. Never been quite up there, but it's supposed to have a massive, great outdoor area. Not that you get much sunshine in Hull, though, to go and sit up there, but that's somewhere else I'd like to have a look up on top of.
So Hull is, again, a city that was obviously went through a bit of a decline, obviously a massive fishing town, and a lot of that has been lost. Obviously, again, industry, again, shipbuilding we've mentioned, and was
a lot was lost during World War II. It was
bombed. It was one of the most bombed cities, wasn't it, in World War II?
It was,
get back across the North Sea without too much weight.
84% of all buildings in the centre of Hull were bomb damaged. In fact, it's the only city left in the country that still has a building that has never been touched since the end of World War II. I think it was an old cinema ballroom. So as you come down Beverley Road, the frontage is there, but all behind is still the bomb site. And there is a group trying to purchase it and restore it now and create a museum. But once again, Hull, like Liverpool suffered more casualties. Hull suffered more damage. And yet the people in Hull and Liverpool were all upset that they were never mentioned on the news. Places like Coventry and London were always referred to, but these two towns, because of propaganda and censorship, they were always just referred to as two cities or two towns in the north had received bombing raids. So a lot of history in Hull.
And I think you're right. Liverpool and Hull are quite similar. And I work in Liverpool now, and there's a lot of similarity in the ports. Hull's probably a bit of a shadow of Liverpool. It hasn't quite got the culture, but it was named City Culture in 2017, wasn't it, Hull? And that had a lot of money invested in it. And then it's now looking at
ironically, it's Siemens making the wind turbines. German company. So it's ironic that they're helping rebuild the city that they basically obliterated in 1943-44.
And I think it was mentioned last week, there is a ale trail in Hull, which again has been quite long standing. I think it's probably is a little bit updated and look at the website, but again, you can download the ale trail. And certainly if you're looking around the old town of Hull, which is the bit down by the river, definitely worth picking that up, get a bit of history about the various pubs there as well. And it's the home of the Scrap Butty, which I think will be Bruce's recommendation for Hull. Whitehead's Chippy, which is on Cottingham Road, which is the big road coming out of north of Hull. And they do a Scrap Butty. Bruce, you better explain for southern people what scraps are.
So scraps are all the little bits of batter that come off the fish when they're deep frying it. They're scooped up, put to one side, kept warm, and traditionally you get them on top of your fish and chips. They're free. That's the thing. They are free. So they're very popular. Sadly, probably a couple of ounces of scraps probably takes about 2 years off your life, though. So that scrap butter is probably like a slow form of euthanasia, really.
And the fact they're a byproduct, that means they're charging 75p for a bread bun then.
I don't think scraps are free anymore. I think you have to pay for scraps now. But again,
not up in here, Yorkshire.
In our neck of the woods, it'd be one of each and a bag of scraps, which is one fish, one chips, and scraps. And so I said this probably it's launched over the pandemic. Whitehead's Chippy do a Scrap Butty for 75p, which is a Yorkshire barm cake full of, as Bruce said, scrappings from the bottom of the fryer. So at least they don't make it into gravy like they do at KFC when they're scrapped, do they? Work it through. So Hull is definitely worth a town going to have a look at. It's now got obviously
City
announced marina. The Deep is again. I know he's struggling a little bit more with the current pandemic.
That's a fantastic collection of museums that are free to go to as well, hasn't it?
You've got William Wilberforce there, obviously the slavery
Transport Museum,
which is quite famous. And I say you've got that mix of very kind of the old town, the old warehouses against that more Victorian, very kind of classical buildings from that we mentioned the station, but also the post office and the customs houses, which are very nice as well.
And then the 50s and 60s concrete from the rebuild.
Yeah.
That is well. Oh, sorry. So it's
Go on,
probably
Bruce.
worth pointing out as well that if you're after a cheap weekend away, the hotels are really, really cheap. There's so much to do as well. You can go there, you can go spend a night around Beverley, so you can get down to Brid. But if you're on a tight budget, the hotels are insanely cheap. I think we went on a night there last year because we were going to, my wife and daughter were going to a show. We stayed the Premier Inn for like a family room for £29 on the Saturday night, which is bonkers. So say it must be the cheapest place.
And I know they did there was a bit of concern because I think the beer trail was getting a little bit of a, popular hen night, whatever, stag do thing. But I think Hull is quite a hard place to get to, isn't it? It is at the end of the line. And I think, it's a long journey, both by road and or rail. They come from Manchester or Leeds, it's an hour and a half to get there. The motorway seems to go on forever. So it still has that. It doesn't get too mad. It's still kind of a place where it's not like Dublin, for example, on a Saturday night. It's busy.
I mean, make no bones about it. The old town's fantastic. These pubs are great, but when you get there, you're very much aware that you're a town that's on the bones of its ass, aren't you? Really? That feel permeates. And of course, Ferrens Way, the main shopping street. Well, sadly, House of Fraser's closed down now, and now Debenhams has gone as well. So when you come out of the station, House of Fraser's, as Hammond's was. There's plans to turn it into a sort of street food centre, whether that'll fly or not, because Trinity Market started doing that. So it really is, got a lot of issues, really. I know. This does kind of dress it up a bit, doesn't it, really?
Hey, Bruce, you know what they say, it's never dull in Hull.
No, very true, very true. The people are really friendly as well, aren't they?
Yeah, and again, I've never felt unsafe in Hull. I mean, I'm even there, in the night time. It's one of those places, it's a proper northern town, really. I think, again, there are literally hundreds of pubs in Hull. We've tried to pick probably, 6 that certainly we probably would drink in, or if we were going ourselves, we'd definitely go to, if not all these, 3 or 4 of them. I think, as always, our idea would be go to the furthest point, which I guess is the Minerva. So get down to the river and then work your way back towards the station. So if you want to walk, it's probably, I don't know, what is it, half an hour to the Minerva from the same Hull railway station?
Yeah.
25 minutes, half an hour.
20 minutes, yeah.
You've got to get over Clive Sullivan Way, which is kind of the busy inner ring road. So the Minerva is literally on the banks of the Humber. So it's a nice place to have a walk down and look at a normally very grey and murky water. Again, sometimes very frighteningly fast at times, a bit like Mersey when the tide's going out. It really rips past there. You do get a nice view of the Humber Bridge, which will be to your right from there. And if you're lucky, you might see a couple of big boats coming in. And again, they've done quite a lot of work on that kind of promenade bit down there, haven't they?
Yeah.
You'll also be quite close to new floodgates on the River Hull, which again are worth looking at or walking past. And again, Nick, there are some very impressive toilets in that square outside the Minerva, aren't there? Which again are a bit like the kind of the
Victorian, shiny copper, brass, and porcelain enamel. Yeah.
So
definitely
Minerva is a big old, I guess, Dockers pub in the past. It's a big old, was a Tetley's house. Again, I've got a nice picture of it on the screen if you're watching. It's been there for many, many years. Very popular place, certainly in the summer. Lots of places outside to drink. There's a little bit on the side, which used to be a brewery in the good old days, but now I think we just extended that into a drinking area. Lots of rooms. It's one of those kind of TARDIS pubs. As you get into it, it goes bigger and bigger. Big bar at the front, although we tend to stay to the left and go into the sidebars and the big at the back. And it's got a fantastic snug, which seats 3 people. So again, if you get there fairly
really
early,
snug.
Get in that little snug. Again, another pub that's got a lot of photos and history on the walls about Hull and the whaling fleets and the docks, everything, which is interesting as well. So certainly worth going down there. It's a free house now. So again, there's always a really good range of beers on. And again, most people in Hull probably would recommend, if you ask them, good pub in Hull, they'd probably say the Minerva.
It's increased in popularity every time. Last 2 or 3 times I've been there, it's been busy compared to what it used to be. Really is busy now.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of gins on in there, so you get a lot of ladies going in there now as well. I can't see. I know they closed for a while because they were struggling, it seems, but I can't see them ever looking back now because, as you say, Mike, all down that area, all those what used to be all warehouses where all the fruit market and stuff was, they're just being opened up as bars and restaurants and eateries now. So people are migrating down there now. Are not going to Hull to shop. They're going to Hull just for a day out. And so everyone's migrating out to that area now. So hopefully it means that they aren't going to struggle in the future.
And I say to the left of the pub, you can't really see it here, but I've said here, if you walk out the left side, you walk back to the marina, and that's quite a big complex now. Lots of nice posh yachts and boats and things as you walk back towards the old town. So we have got some pictures on the left there for those that are looking. That is me and Nick. Last time we went to Minerva together, we actually got in the snug. And I think the picture there of Nick is, you can see how small that is. A cracking little place. If you get this, and as I mentioned there, you can see some of those photos and things on the wall with information, which is good as well. So once you've left Minerva, if you then suggest you head towards the old town, which is kind of the old, kind of, as it says, yes, the old bit of the fish town, the old dockers town of Hull. There are literally pubs every, 100 yards out in the old town.
Yeah, less than that.
And so you can pick and choose really where you want to go. There'll be some door stuff outside some of them. There'll be loud music coming out of some of them. So again, you can often kind of pick up. But there's a bit of a strange combination that we mentioned when we were just going to get ready for this. There's William Hawkes in there. What's that bar? Is it bar 52, Nick, that we went a few times, or bar 82 or whatever it's called? Or is that William Hawkes I'm thinking about? It's like a wine bar, but so decent ale.
Yeah, well, see, it looks like a converted shop.
Yeah.
And even the fixtures and fittings inside are sort of 1960s, 1970s, but it was a real ale revolution at its time.
Yeah.
But you certainly wouldn't say it was a traditional pub inside or even a comfortable pub as such. But yeah.
So this again is good. If you got the ale trail leaflet, that'll take you around the old town. Again, I probably would say if you want to have a quite nice just trip around, probably pick a midweek day. It does get quite busy on a Saturday and a bit more on a Sunday. So I think if you want just to wander around, perhaps, almost on your own, then probably pick a weekday. So
it's called the land of green ginger, isn't it? The area now.
Yeah.
Is there a street actually called that?
I think there is. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The land of green ginger, and that's where.
That's the line in Key, isn't it?
Yeah, you head for the land of green ginger, and along there, then you're picking up all these very, very old pubs, which, like you say, in the good old days would have been the haunts of the sailors, and that's why they haven't changed that much.
Yeah.
But it was always, it's always intrigued me why it was called the land of green ginger.
So kick us off, Ye Old Black Boy, which you can imagine is currently full of debate in local papers about the name of it. And Ye Old Black Boy is, again, a very old pub.
2 rooms, wooden strip floors.
Been there forever, really, hasn't it? A bit of a recent refurb, but again, atmospheric. There'll be at least 3 or 4 different beers on there, which is worth going on. A little bit further on there, probably my favourite is the Lion and Key. This used to be a dirty Nellies in the old kind of Irish, when we had that phrase back in the kind of 90s, noughties, on a corner. Now, this used to be linked to the Cathead Brewery, which was, again, in the next street or so, but can't find at the moment whether Cathead is still brewing. But again, this place it's one of those places that's got beer mats all over the ceiling in regards, doesn't it? And it's got some nice rooms.
Clips, yeah.
And
it's incredibly popular on a weekend. We tried to get in last February. No, couldn't even get through the door. It's incredibly popular, yeah.
It smells of fish and chips.
Well, again, it's famous for fish and chips, isn't it?
It is, but sometimes when you're not eating, then you don't feel like fish and chips. I don't know. Sometimes fish and chips can smell nice, and sometimes they can smell offensive when you're in a pub, really.
And I think last time we were there, we ended up being able to sit outside the back. There's a little beery garden bit at the back, wasn't there, that they'd opened up that we sat in. But again, worth a visit. If you walk then back from there, going back towards the kind of city centre, 2 pubs on your way there. One would be the Old Blue Ball, which surprisingly has got an Old Blue Bell, which has got a big old blue bell out of it. Again, this is a great Yorkshire passageway pub. So you walk down a passageway right next to Trinity Market, and this is another Sam Smith's pub. Again, a very oldie worldy kind of place, isn't it?
Well, it's almost like a work. It's all
guys will really hit their trade, because they used to go and it was always full of like old men for whom it was a second home. I mean,
it was like a working man's club, really, wasn't it, Bruce?
It was, but with like a real fires. It had a lovely sort of shabby feel, but very homely.
Fixtures and fittings were very much 70s and early 80s, and
they were. But I just feel they'll migrate to Wetherspoons, because £1 a pint. If you're on a budget, it's only paying £3 something that was £2, and you can go to Wetherspoons and get a pint of Green King for, was it now 139 or something? You know, if you're on a budget, it's a no-brainer, isn't it, sadly?
But worth going in. Again, you get the normal Sam Smith's fare. Trinity Market, again, is a little bit of a revamp next door to it, which is worth going in, a proper old-fashioned indoor market. I think, like I said, we were there. There's a few beer stores in there as well.
Yeah,
And
it's not very big though, is it? You would think it'd be a lot
Huge.
bigger for a city the size of Hull, like, but
And then through there, you get to the Hull Minster, which again is quite a nice, quite a bit of a refurbished plaza. And famously, they run the Hull Beer Festival in the crypt of the Hull Minster, which apparently is a really good do. And again, somewhere we need to go really as well.
Yeah.
And then the other one in that kind of area, which again is another kind of passageway pub, is the Oldie White Hart, which again you can sometimes miss. It's a pub where you've got to go down the passageway and then the pub's towards the back. Again, nice big sign outside. And this is one of Hull's oldest pubs. And again, my notes say it's a 17th century merchant's house with ingle nooks and a plotter's parlour. And it really is kind of oldie world in there, isn't it? Lots of very dark wood. It's kind of very small leaded windows. And I didn't know this, but I'm just reading this in the book you bought me, Nick, for Christmas. And the joy of pubs, which is quite a nice little book. And the plotter's parlour, which I think last time we were there, we sat in there. We actually sat at that table because there's a skull, isn't there? There's a skull in a glass case that kind of stares down at you that they found apparently when the place was at a fire 50 years ago. But I didn't know this. So it says that a lot of pubs in the UK can talk about links to the Civil War. But the one that kind of tops them all is the Old White Hart in Hull, which is where the whole thing started. On the 23rd of April in 1642, in an upstairs room, still known as the Plotter's Parlour, a group of parliamentarians agreed to close the city gates against the approaching King of England. The ensuing unsuccessful siege of Hull by the king was the first confrontation of a bruising conflict, which continued off and on for 17 years and was the Civil War. So the English Civil War, they claim, was started upstairs in the oldie White Hart.
Yeah.
So going back to our telephone boxes, that's why Hull doesn't have any ER, crest on its telephone boxes, because Hull still has this thing about being, even though it's Kingston, against the kind of royalties of a parliamentarian city. So hasn't got a royal whatever it is. So there you go. And it's worth going in there. I don't the beer something a bit eclectic in there, if I remember rightly. There's some quite strange things that you wouldn't kind of
last time we went in there, Bruce, I had a pint of Caledonian. Do you remember when Duckers was all the rage?
Yes, I do remember that actually. Yeah,
and then they did another one called the Flying Scotsman, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right.
You don't see Duck. I mean, once again, Duckers almost took over from Timothy Taylor's. You walked into a pub that was saying they're offering guest ale, and it was all bloody Duckers.
Yeah.
Caledonian Brewery Duckers. So
you don't barely see it now, do you really?
No, that's what I'm saying. Whether it was a fantastic marketing plan on there. I don't even know whether they're an independent brewery, whether they're part of a massive chain or what, like. But I remember, they said they did Duckers, and then they did the Dukers, whatever you want to call it. And then they said they did, I'm sure it was one with a train on it, Flying Scotsman or some special like that. But we're drinking a pint of Scottish beer in a old pub, but there we are.
It was everywhere.
So by now, if you've been to Beverley, you're probably getting towards a 10 pint mark now. So you're probably starting to feel it a little bit. So if you stagger back towards kind of the railway station, on your way back, if you swing a little bit kind of to one side, you could end up at the Hop and Vine, which is just the top side of the kind of main shopping area in Hull. And the Hop and Vine is the number one camera ranked pub in Hull. This is, they claim to be in the basement of the only remaining Georgian terrace in Hull. So it's a basement pub. It was a wine bar. It's now a real ale, real cider place. And again, Nick, is an interesting place to go, isn't it? As we found.
It's certainly in a basement, yeah. I mean, I'm in a cellar today, but that's a basement. And there was, as I remember, there wasn't much ventilation blowing down there. And it was quite a warm day, wasn't it? And
probably 4 tables, a very, very small bar, 4 tables. Again, the loo is behind a curtain. But worth going to, and a cracking range of beers as always, and ciders. which you mentioned last week as well.
Knowledgeable blokes with beards hanging out in there.
Yes, it's one of those kind of typical camera place. So, you know, it's worth ticking off. And again, you could probably get in there and get probably a half of something quite different, quite weird. And then from there, you can stagger back to the station and head back to wherever you came from. So that's Hull, I think. We've just about pretty much.
Can we just mention, I mentioned to you guys earlier that me and Bruce had been to the Black Horse in Preston a couple of weeks back. I think we featured some photographs on the YouTube. The ceramic bar, we've mentioned the ceramic bar in the Garden Gate in Hunslet as well. There's actually only 14 pubs in the whole of the country got ceramic bars. 2 of those are in Hull. Now, the last time me and Bruce went to Hull, the ones in the polar bear, the white bear, the polar bear, walked all the way out there. It's up by the River Hull, just on the edge of the old town. Unfortunately, it was closed, and it was closed as in closed down. Understand it did reopen once again. Don't know what's going to happen because of COVID. And then the other pub that I've never been in has got the ceramic bar as well, and they reckon that is identical to the one that is in the Garden Gate. So,
all right.
We keep saying it. If we do get back to Hull whenever we can, when lockdown's up, it might be worth having that extra walk out there to try and find those 2 pubs. Because I say the fact there's only 14 left in the country and 2 of them
Probably
are in Hull, it'd be worth.
I'm sure they're open, won't we? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then
so that's.
So there's something spectacular about a ceramic bar, though, isn't there? The feel it gives to a pub's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other one that we haven't mentioned, which is again a lot of the books talk about, is the Whalebone, which again is out that way, Nick, towards that by the River Hull there, on that kind of eastern side of Hull city centre. And that's again very much for Dockers pub. So again, if you got a bit more time, maybe worth popping out there as well. So definitely worth a trip to Hull. I say we probably would definitely say if you can spend an hour or so in Beverley, it's well worth doing it. Hull and Beverley are both fairly compact, certainly the city centres. Half an hour you could definitely get across the town of Beverley and the city of Hull, certainly into the old town. So you can probably walk most places and then get back to the stations. So that's it. I think we've done another one put to bed, Hull and East Riding. So that just leaves us next week. We're going to move on to look at the Real Ale Trail. I'll just leave us with this final picture for those that are on YouTube. Just the government health warning that, as I mentioned, if you start off early on at SEMA and you start drinking Punk IPA on the train, you get off at Driffield, you get off at Beverley, you go around Hull, you go back to Beverley, and it can be fairly fatal. So this is a picture of Nicholas asleep on my mum and dad's rug in front of the fire at about 7:30 on a Wednesday night, I think. And in fact, he did quite well because he did wake up, and we actually went up and ended up going to Italian restaurant Florio's for a little bit more.
Like a contented, wet-nosed Labrador, I was.
It can be pretty fatal. So as always, I hope you've enjoyed listening to this week's cast. We are available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, on YouTube. Again, if you could leave us a review, that would be fantastic. As I mentioned, if you do want to direct messages in Twitter, if you do want the list of pubs, I will try and write those up each week, just so you've got kind of written copy as well. And if I can, I'll put links in to things like the ale trails that we mentioned as well. And so next week, we are going to go and revisit the Transpennine Real Ale Trail. So we'll probably begin our journey in Staley Bridge, and we'll work west to east and end up in Leeds. And again, we'll see how we get on, really, whether we talk about Leeds a bit more detail. I think we've got a lot to talk about, really, on that line, anyway, haven't we? So we could probably debate whether some of those pubs in there are on the list. I think there's probably more in Huddersfield that we've been to that are listed there as well. So we'll have a look at that as well.
Head of Steam's missing from Huddersfield, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's next week. So good listening, and see you all in a week's time. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Cheers.